Hey all, Kevin here, and I'm outside? So somehow after wandering around inside my house, I ended up a little bit outside of it. With everything with me, but nothing. Get it? Nothing? The 2A is certainly a phone of all time, and when I give this label of the phone of all time, I don't mean it lightly. But first, before we even get into the review, let me take off this god-awful case. It looks like crap. Get this stupid... Alright, much better. Nothing surprised everyone this year entering the mid-range market, or really the lower mid-range market. The mid-range market? Compared to its competitors in this market, this phone sits in its absolute throne of drip. I mean, look at this thing. I mean, just look at it next to the muddy water iPhone 15 Pro Max, or the traffic light of the Samsung S24 Ultra. Or heck, compare it to the A849 or Unihertz Tank 3 Pro with 512 gigs of storage, 18 gigs of RAM, and a built-in projector. You can't really compete with this drip. I mean, look at this industrial design. Oh wait, the glyph interface. Nothing's biggest gimmick is its glyph interface. Whether you like it or not, it's been the brand's icon. From letting you know when your food is arriving, counting down to your snooze timer, or heck, doubling down as disco lights. Useful? Not really. Cool? Definitely. And I think it winds up working better on the Nothing Phone 2A here compared to the Nothing 2 or 1, because this back glass is not glass, it's plastic. Which obviously you wouldn't want to put on the ground, but rather the screen protector. The 2A's official screen protector is the kind that doesn't have black borders, which means, unfortunately, it will collect dust in its edges. And it also costs $39. I mean, at least you get this Nothing branded microfiber, right? Okay, Kevin, the glyph interface is very cool, but what if I need to see the screen? Okay, yeah, the Nothing 2A does have a problem, especially the launch day units. And in fact, my team member experienced that issue on their unit. Whether or not that results in failed screen protector installations or displays that look like LCDs, the launch of the Nothing 2A has been admittedly rough. I did dodge the broken LCD display, but my screen was a little bit wavy. That didn't affect my installation of my screen protector, but I did see signs of it while installing it. So it does seem like the display warping does affect screen protectors, but if your screen protector has strong adhesive, it should be fine. Look, it's not uncommon that phone launches are rough. I mean, look at the S24 Ultra, for example. I went through 4 units before I got one without display issues and quality control issues. Heck, even the iPhone 15 lineup had issues, allegedly, with its titanium build. And look, if you do have issues with your unit, I would suggest you return it for an exchange or at least your money back. We'll certainly keep you updated whether or not our milk unit gets a replacement or not, as we did buy it directly from Nothing. Speaking of which, those updates will be left in the comment section below or in our community tab, where we will post more tech-related stuff for you guys to enjoy. So make sure you like and subscribe for that. But if you don't have any screen issues, you're gonna get treated with probably... But if you don't have any screen issues, you're going to get treated with probably one of the nicest panels in terms of symmetry, viewing angles, and somewhat okay brightness. And we can't appreciate this without accidentally scratching the back plastic if we put it on the floor. That's where the official Nothing case comes in. Where did it go? This case is not good, at least on the black variant. I'm sure it would look great on the milk or white variants, but on the black version, it just looks really dusty. Now in natural light, it's not half as bad, but you can see every single smudge and fingerprint you put on it. I mean, it is pretty much the same without the case with the black version, but in artificial lighting, it just looks weird. And also you get these weird wet stains if you clean the case a little too much. And the only way to fix this is to get your greasy hand oils and rub it along the back of the case until you get some nice residue on there, and that will fix your wet spot issues. What's also worse is this case costed $45. For me, it's just not worth it because my pockets are quite abrasive thanks to me carrying around 2 phones. This clear case is a little bit overpriced, and I'd advise you to go on AliExpress or Amazon and get some alternative case for cheaper. But hey, at least you can use your phone while it's on the floor. You can think of Nothing OS's skin like every single corporate company's logo modernization. Okay, that was a bit of a joke. But its simplicity aims to bring a less distracting experience to your everyday life, which by design makes the glyph interface the simplified way to interact with your phone. Important messages? Persistent light. Someone's calling? F***ing disco. This ended up working as I found myself using my phone less and staring at the glyph interface lights. But don't let this hands-off experience fool you, because this phone is no slouch. Especially from a phone at this price bracket. Opening multiple apps? No problem. Switching between them? No problem. The OS animations, although are quite stock, have much more attention to detail to them. Unlike other Android devices that simply flashbang you if you change your mind about closing an app, Nothing OS reverses your decision with elegance. The UI responsiveness is instantaneous and stays glued to your finger, even when compared to the likes of the Ultra from Samsung. Generally, everything you do on this phone feels quite snappy, except for the camera app, which is a bit of an experience. The shutter speed reminds me of an old Samsung trying to shoot in 108 megapixel mode, talking the first S20s and the Note 20s of Samsung's lineup. And the lens transitions are quite rough. But let's not bag the experience based on its UI. Let's see how the camera actually performs. Generally, the images from the Nothing 2A were a little bit brighter and sometimes overexposed, but the white balance was a lot better than the Samsung's, with Samsung often opting for more cooler tones, while the Nothing 2A seemed a bit warmer. Even though the Nothing 2A has Samsung's GN1 50 megapixel sensor, its detail output isn't the greatest. Testing out portrait mode, I'll just say the portrait mode is there, but probably don't use it. Yes, these subjects aren't ideal for portraits, but if you look at this giant tree here, the background is not blurred correctly. The Nothing has decided to blur the trees instead of the whole background. The dynamic range is actually respectable when I tested it in extreme conditions, with the Nothing pulling out a lot more detail in the shadows than the Samsung. But this does kind of make sense because the Samsung has a larger sensor, hence more light sensitivity and harder to, well, adapt to. If it weren't for the blown out highlights, I would actually much prefer the Nothing 2A's rendition, as its color science is just more on point. But where the Nothing really shows its price point is in video. It just cannot compete. So here's the audio quality and the video quality of the Nothing 2A against the S24 Ultra. Do note I do have screen protectors on both phones, so obviously if I point these towards the sun, the glare is going to be absolutely miserable. But anyways, let me know what you guys think of the audio quality and the video quality of the front-facing cameras. Now unfortunately, because the Nothing can only do Full HD 30 FPS, I have the same settings set on the Samsung S24 Ultra. And now let's go flip to the back. Now, for the rear efforts on the S24 Ultra and Nothing 2A, they all can switch between all their lenses at Full HD 30 FPS. However, if we switch to 4K 60, or not 4K 30, the Nothing can only switch between its digital 2x crop and 1x crop. Whereas the Samsung can do 1 to whatever, negative, not negative, I don't know what I'm talking about, all the lenses. Both of these cameras also include an action mode, so if you like running and recording things, be my guest. And I just realized I have a camera in my bag that's completely unzipped and I shouldn't be running. So let me probably stop doing that. It's quite clear that the software hasn't been completely ironed out yet with its odd highlight control and inconsistent lens transitions. But enough about software, what about the actual physical hardware processing? Software optimizations can only go so far, especially on Android where all the phones are so fragmented. Well, what seems to be the actual issue here? Well, I believe the problem lies with the choice of chipset. Nothing this year decided to go with the Dimensity 7200 Pro, which is a custom chipset co-engineered with Dimensity to ensure optimizations for the Nothing 2A. Now, am I saying these optimizations don't exist in the phone? No, absolutely not. The battery life of this has been 90% of my S24 Ultra, which means 1.5 days on a heavy-ish load with a lot of screen off time, or 1 full day of super heavy usage with constant screen on time. So if you're not quite a heavy user on this phone could easily last you 2 days. And to explain my bigger problems, I kind of have to be inside in a controlled environment to do so. So why the heck am I outside? Obviously because staring at the product while constantly spinning it around and fumbling with it in your hands while reading the specs like, this phone has 12 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage, 250 megapixel Samsung sensors, and a 1300 nit display, 120Hz is boring. It's totally not because my studio sucks. You just can't have fun inside a studio environment. Ah, shit! I'm in the studio now! Here on the table we have two devices, which is obviously the Nothing 2A and a certain massive brick. But bear the brick in mind for a second, just ignore the form factor. What we want to look at here is the fact that both of these phones are running Dimensity chipsets, one of which being the 8200 and one of which being the 7200. Now, if nothing is to believe, you shouldn't trust the numbers, the differences between these two chipsets shouldn't be that much, as we will see in the benchmark scores. Here in Geekbench 6, we can see that the differences between the 7200 and 8200 is about 35% in multi-core, but the single core score is relatively the same, so opening and closing apps isn't much different. And if we go ahead and exit this and go into 3D Mark Wildlife, the 35% difference continues on. Now, what does this all mean? These are just benchmark numbers. They truly cannot translate into real life, right? As Nothing would say, you shouldn't trust the numbers. But in this case, I do believe that you should trust the numbers, and the best way to do that is by looking at actual gaming. Alright, so the ambient temperatures in this room is around 20 degrees Celsius, so it's more colder than you would usually find in like the summer or something. And I also have my thermal gun right here to check the initial temperatures. We're around 26 degrees on the front, and on the rear we're around 26 degrees as well. So let's get started and play some Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail. I've already pre-tested the 8200, which we'll compare to the numbers later. And just for reference, if you want to skip the gameplay, which is probably going to be very short anyway, just skip to here. Alright, just exploring around here, we can see that the game is getting about 35 FPS on average. It's not the greatest, and this is obviously going to dip down even further once there's more combat animations and particle effects. So let's go ahead and go do some combat and see what happens during that. Alright, just look at the performance right now. This isn't actually terrible. What is terrible is my gameplay. I'm beating this so slowly. But anyway, let's not talk about my gameplay. Let's talk about the phone. It's not getting that hot. Like the back of this phone, like if I go grab the thermal gun, it's only around 33, 32 degrees at the hot spot around here being 38-ish degrees. Alright, so we're about 10 minutes into the gameplay, and this is normally the time that most phones will thermal throttle, and right now the performance hasn't really dipped, and the phone doesn't feel hot at all. In fact, this is a much more comfortable experience than playing on like the Samsung S24 Ultra or the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Those phones at the higher settings get really toasty. Now granted, this is only running at like 40, 35 FPS while things get intense, but the temperatures, they don't feel that terrible. Alright, so here we have the frame rate for that 5-minute period at the end of the Abyss, and we got an average of 45.5 FPS. This isn't terrible considering this is a mid-ranger, but here comes the underlying problem. Now, I'll put this phone aside and pull in this behemoth, but it doesn't quite matter if this is a behemoth or not. It is the chipset that matters. If we go ahead and go into Genshin Impact, we're going to see something a little bit interesting. And already just from going into the game, I can immediately feel the massive, massive difference. This is running smooth, and this is only one chip up from the 7200. Now you might be saying, oh wow, the phones that run this processor must be a lot more expensive. And yes, like this thing here is $900. But this chipset can be found in phones that are actually cheaper than the Nothing 2A, like the Tecno Camo 30 Pro, which I believe is about $100 cheaper, or like the Vivo Neo 7. But regardless, the processor here is objectively better than the processor in the Nothing 2A. Now, I'm not going to play Genshin Impact for the entire video to show you how well this phone runs it. I will, however, show you a 22-minute play session of Genshin Impact, and you can see here that it was pretty much a solid 60 FPS all the way through to 13 minutes. Now, do I necessarily have to show you a 22-minute session on this? Well, not really. You can probably guess the average frame rate for that. It's probably going to be about 35, or if we're lucky, 40. Now, obviously, a processor doesn't make the whole phone experience, and with Nothing here, you're paying for the Nothing experience. And with that, they do pay a lot of attention to other things other than the processor. This phone comes with stereo speakers, which actually sound pretty good. I'll quickly give you a sound sample right now, but if you want to see a longer sample, check the link in the description below and have a listen for yourself.
Hey, boogie, boogie, bam, bam, let's go party, body, boom, boom. Hey,
of the Nothing 2A? Well, it's certainly a solid phone, but the only problem I have, it's really a jack of all trades and master of none. It's got the aesthetics of a flagship, but it's built like a budget phone. It's got a decent processor, but still gets beaten out by cheaper options. And the display, although symmetrical, isn't as bright as the competition, with most of the competition having 1600 nits or 2000 nits displays at this current time. But you're not paying for any of that. You are paying for the nothing experience, the glyph interface, the software optimizations, and nothing OS. Though it may not be the most price-conscious phone, if you are looking for that nothing experience, nothing is better. Sorry. But right now, considering the quality control on the launch day units, I would probably hold off my money and wait for this phone to really stabilize in the market. Or alternatively, just wait for this phone to go on sale. But do you know what you don't have to pay for? A subscription to this channel. If you haven't seen the $49 grocery store phone review, make sure you go check that out. It's quite a blast. But if that doesn't pique your interest, make sure you go check out our camera comparison, where we put the S24 Ultra, the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and the Pixel 8 Pro all together in a camera battle. Now, if you want to show us some more support, go check out our Patreon, where we will be uploading some exclusive content and behind the scenes stuff. We'll also be launching a community soon, which you can access once we announce it. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching, and make sure you subscribe, or else.